You know, some things in life are a bit uncertain, but what's always a guarantee is that we're going to get some new Game Pass drops. So I'm going to take you through all of the new ones being added in the second half of April. Let's do it. So first up, there's a game that basically tells you what it's all about right up front, and that is Orcs Must Die 3. This one's arriving on April 17th, and it just takes everything you already loved about third-person tower defense and just supersizes it. And I do mean supersize it. They've added this new mode called War Scenarios, which lets you test out all the things you know about the game, whether it's traps, whether it's the weapons, whether it's just tactics you employed, and now use them against these enormous orc armies. It's just ramping everything up. It seems really cool, like screen-filling amounts of enemies. But for those that haven't played it before, Orcs Must Die 3 is going to be a follow-up to Orcs Must Die 2, I guess. It's probably what it's called. And it's set 20 years after the fact, so you're going to be picking up the story from there. But in terms of the gameplay, there are loads of traps, weapons, like I mentioned. Again, they're equipping your arsenal with even more to use, like this mega boom barrel launcher, which sounds really fun to say, but I imagine it's really fun to use at the same time. Once you've actually completed the story, which, by the way, you can play in co-op with your buddies, there are going to be challenges to do. So there's plenty of game to enjoy here. There's weekly challenges, there's scramble mode, which lets you face an ever-evolving army of orcs. I think just looks like a whole bunch of fun. Like I said, 17th of April, you can get that one downloaded and start playing. And you know what it kind of reminds me of is back when Fortnite first launched and it was more about the like tower defense side of it. That's such a throwback. Anyway, EA is also getting involved this month, and Xbox Game Pass Ultimate members can hit the ice on April 18th with EA Sports NHL 24. Now, games like these I absolutely love. I love sports, but I love playing sports games purely because, well, I suppose it's the only way that I'll ever actually competitively get involved in those sports, let's be honest. NHL in particular looks like so much fun because it's a physical game, and they've really ramped up the physics-based contact in this version of NHL, and so all of those body checks and slams into the wall just feel ramped up, more realistic, more satisfying, more crunch to them. Now, for fans of the series, there's going to be new updates to systems that you already know and love, like vision passing or total control skill moves, and they just give you a bit more puck control so that you can find that little alleyway to slot a pass through or just juke other players. And yes, it wouldn't be an EA Sports game without Ultimate Team, and NHL is no different. It allows you to take the stars of the game from different teams, even legends, and combine them into your own vision of a championship-winning team. There's new goal celebrations, there's an upgraded presentation mode. I think the thing that EA always does really well with their sports games is making them feel true to life. No matter what the sports game is, whether it's FC, whether it's Madden, you really do feel like you're there on game day, getting involved with the fans, and it just looks better than ever, especially on Xbox Series X and S. Something that I've really enjoyed seeing lately is Game Pass's library of JRPGs just growing more and more, because the fan base for that genre is just always hungry for these huge, expansive tales with a great cast of characters. I mean, we've had Ni no Kuni, Yakuza Like a Dragon, the Persona series, all of them hitting Game Pass, and this month Game Pass is adding another one to the library, and that is Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. In fact, you can already play the prequel to this game on Game Pass right now. It's called Eiyuden Chronicle Rising, but on April 23rd, you can play 100 Heroes Day 1. So just looking at this game, it's absolutely gorgeous. I love this little diorama-esque sort of 2.5D zoomed in vignette style. It's a lot of adjectives, but you know what? It makes for a really gorgeous presentation style. If you loved games like Octopath Traveler, it's just that exact same feel to it. It feels handcrafted, but also really detailed at the same time. And you probably guessed by the name, but 100 Heroes, they really are delivering on that. This is a game with a huge cast of characters to recruit. There's humans, anthropomorphic animals like lizard-looking people. It's a lot to wrap your head around, but you know what? If you're into JRPGs, you probably already knew that. The battles are turn-based, as you'd expect, and that allows for a lot of different tactical methods you can employ. I reckon everyone's experience with 100 Heroes is going to be very different based on who they've recruited, what their playstyle's like, and that just means that everyone's going to experience this gorgeously, almost, I suppose, bespoke way of playing this game, because you're going to play it the way you love it, I'm going to play it the way I love it. We're all loving it. That's the main thing. As much as I'd love to get into Eiyuden Chronicle's story with you guys right now, we'd probably be here a while because JRPGs typically run for hundreds and hundreds of hours. So, but what you can expect is an epic fantasy world that you're going to be plunged into with evil to fight, people to meet, stories to unfurl, and it's just going to be a lovely experience. But don't feel like too overwhelmed by all of that, because although yes, there's a lot to unpack with a game like Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, they've done a few clever things here to introduce and onboard new players to JRPGs in general. So you can do this thing called a general strategy for your party, which is built of up to 6 characters, which can sound like a lot. There's a lot of like micromanagement if you were to try and control every single one of them. Alternatively, what you can do is just control your main character and let everyone else do like auto battling based on what you prefer their role to be. So you can tell this guy to be more on the heals, this guy to be more on the defense, this guy to be more on the attacks. That way it's much simpler, but still allows you to enjoy all the different party building scenarios and all the gameplay mechanics, whilst letting some of it get offloaded so that you're not too stressed out. Sounds great. Right, I did mention there were some other day one drops this month, and the next one is an absolute banger. Everyone on our team is so excited to play this game. It's called Another Crab's Treasure, and you're going to be able to play it from April 25th. It's deceptively brutal because it doesn't look like the sort of game that would have you banging your head against the wall with how frustrating the difficulty is. Sort of like Cuphead a little bit, I suppose, in that it looks cutesy, but actually the mechanics are quite difficult. There's a lot of timing. It's basically a Souls-like game. So if you're waiting for something to do until the Elden Ring DLC comes out, then you've got no better game to play than this one right here. So you play as a hermit crab, and that in itself actually gets turned into a gameplay mechanic, which sounds really fun. Hermit crabs obviously love to shed their shell, find a new home, pick it up. That's worked into the mechanics. So depending on what shell you've got equipped, I say shell quite loosely because you could literally pick up tin cans or whatever you get your claws on and turn that into your new armor, and that will actually influence the attacks that you can do, or if you've got like different abilities now that are at your disposal based on what you've equipped as your new hermit home. So you're actually on a quest to buy back your original shell. I suppose this crab got particularly attached to that one, but along the way there's going to be over 50 different shells to find, equip, like boots, guns, guns, light bulbs, random stuff, and they all provide different levels of protection but also unique offensive abilities. Like I mentioned, the tin can basically lets you do like a shotgun blast. It's just mad. But it also goes deeper than that, because now that you've got this shell on you, shells are typically a defense mechanism, but maybe you actually rather not block using the shell because you're then going to risk breaking the shell, losing the abilities or attacks that come with it. So there's this sort of risk-reward balancing you're going to be doing as you're playing the game. There's a lot of thinking going on in this cute-looking, brutal, harsh, oceanic nightmare. The enemies that you're fighting are obviously all sea creature themed, so there's going to be like mantis shrimps and eels and all sorts, and you can actually learn even more special attacks once you've defeated those foes. For example, once you beat the mantis shrimp, you're probably going to learn how to box pretty good, and there's also bobbit worms, which will teach you how to ensnare your enemies, make them easy targets. I can't wait to play it. Looks like loads of fun, so mark it down on April 25th in your calendars. Okay, this next one is just for the PC gamers. It's a day one drop on April 26th called Manor Lords, and you've probably already heard about it because it's basically the most hotly anticipated game available on PC right now. So you get to be a Manor Lord, a Lord of the Manor, if you will, and it's basically set in medieval times. It's a strategy game where you get to actually focus on not just the battles, the war, but also the relationships and economic and social simulations and city building. They've thought of everything here. You have to have full control of all of those aspects to make sure that you basically don't get deposed as the leader and lead to civil unrest or get just killed in a field somewhere in a fight. Don't let that happen because, well, disaster. What's really cool though is that historical accuracy has been a North Star for the developers for this game. They wanted to make sure that all the visuals are actually inspired by the art and architecture of the time. So 14th century vibes you can expect all throughout the game. The mechanics though for the gameplay, they're a bit more derived on how medieval towns actually grew and expanded through time. So history buffs are going to absolutely love immersing themselves in, honestly, quite an awful moment in history. So what was medieval life actually like? Well, what you're going to be doing in the game is finding different resources to gather, then transport them, process them in your different facility buildings, which then lets you create more complex production chains for, bigger buildings, or maybe like battlements or, siege engines, all that sort of fun stuff. And although you are the big boss here, the Lord of the Manor Lords, you are going to have to consider the needs of your citizens before you tick them off too much and they chop your head off. Probably your fault anyway. The city building side of it looks really cool. It's gridless, which if you don't know what that means you're free to just work with the natural undulation of the land. There's no need to say, oh, each house has to be square next to each other. If you want a house here and a house here at a slightly 34-degree angle to it, go for it. That's your town. Just, again, don't get your head chopped off. Most people, however, are probably really interested in the combat side of it. I mean, medieval fights always look pretty cool on TV and film, and now you get to orchestrate your own with other lords. So there are diplomatic things that you can do to avoid conflict, but sometimes you're just going to have to get stuck in there. And they've considered the fact that weather, fatigue levels, all sorts of other considerations often go into deciding the outcome of a fight, not just how experienced your troops are, how large your armies are, or what technological advancements you might have over your foes. So lots to consider with Manor Lords. It seems like it's a really in-depth simulation game. I can't wait to get stuck in and just see how quickly I get my head chopped off. I'll give myself a week. Oh, did I mention that one's day one on PC Game Pass? You're welcome. On the topic of having your head chopped off, we've got a darkly charming looking roguelike hitting this month called Have a Nice Death, which arrives on April 30th to Game Pass. The art style reminds me quite a lot of Hollow Knight, to be honest, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it looks absolutely gorgeous, and I think it might be the cutest I've ever seen a Grim Reaper-esque character look. I love roguelikes. They're just so much fun. It's a really rewarding and gratifying genre for games. Just having that incremental improvement on your character really makes you feel like you've connected with them and helped sort of earn all of your progress throughout the game. There'll be moments where you're just stuck on a particular part, and then when you finally do break through, it feels super earned, it feels super rewarding. I can't wait to play this. It's actually procedurally generated, which is cool. It's set in these offices of Death Inc. So if you imagine that Death was a business, I suppose. There's loads of different weapons to wield. There's spells, there's combos you can do. I think the potential here for people to speedrun the game is going to be quite a lot of fun. But also, it sounds like the sort of game you'd want to take a bit of time with just to see all the different abilities on offer and what you could come up with for your own arsenal of equipped weapons and abilities. At the end of each run, you go through a performance review, which is your chance to get those new upgrades to make your next runs even better. Then, of course, we get into sort of end game territory with a couple of different mechanics, such as curses, which offer you a really strong boon, typically at the expense of something else. There's a trade-off to be made here. So, for example, you could increase the damage that you're dealing, but however, now you have no UI, so how are you going to know how much health you've even got left, or if you've got enough charges of an ability to use it? It's a fun little game that you're going to have to decide whether or not it's worth taking the curse, or whether you're just going to power on through and get on with your day. I think this looks like the perfect game I'd play in between other sessions of larger games like Manor Lords, for example, because I could play it on cloud on my phone, handheld, or I could play it on a ROG Ally, for example, just playing on, handheld PC mode. It seems like easy to pick up and play for 30 minutes, but probably the sort of game I could also easily get lost in for hours on end, just trying out all the different little abilities or upgrades that are on offer. So that's your lot. That's everything coming now in April on Game Pass. Let me know what your favorites are going to be, what you're looking forward to playing first. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and like so you don't miss our next Game Pass video. See ya.